Hello everyone, my name is Sears and I would like to talk to you and show you my top 3 compressors that I have used in 2021. Let's take a look. So the first one we're gonna talk about is the Waves SSL G Bus Compressor. I've already talked about this one back in my top SSL compressors video. It's an emulation of the SSL G series hardware. Simple, straightforward design, quick to set up, easy to get results from. That means when I need to compress something really fast, I just put it on, tweak the threshold until I get like -4 dB of signal reduction, tweak the release times, and that's it. So why do I use it? Well, besides the ease of use, I actually like how it glues the sound together, bringing up the background sounds up front, mainly the mids and the upper mids, and it basically makes the sound fit together effortlessly. It has its character though, so be careful. I found out that the best sweet spot the plugin works in is like the -4 dB of gain reduction, so it won't push the plugin too far, but it will still retain the G unit flavor, so to speak. I also think that the limited settings are an advantage because I don't spend that much time micro tweaking the plugin and wasting my time and energy during composition. So in general, it's useful, quick to set up, sounds great, but should be replaced as soon as you do a proper mixdown, and here's why. It uses 0 to 1% of CPU when it's idle and around 1 CPU when it's processing a signal, has 0 milliseconds of latency, but sadly it doesn't feature oversampling. Does it show aliasing artifacts? Yes, it does. I have introduced a constant sine wave from 1 Hz to 22 kHz at 48 kHz of sample rate, and it starts showing pretty early, roughly somewhere around 500 Hz. In that regard, out of the 3 we're gonna talk about today, it's the worst performing one. So that being said, you should keep that in mind, and as soon as you're done composing, you should replace it once you start doing a proper mixdown. One more thing, when you press the analog button, it starts to introduce really low amplitude noise, kind of like a dithering. And the manual says that it also introduces really gentle harmonic distortion, which for the love of me I cannot hear, but the manual says it's there. All in all, this is by no means a mastering compressor. And by the way, it's not free. Moving on, my second option is the Melda compressor, the free version. It features a lot of stuff you can tweak. It's not as fast to set up as the G unit, but it's not bad in general. Most of the stuff you can see is pretty much standard issue, but you have RMS control that sets the compressor into RMS detection mode. The length in milliseconds pretty much says how many samples it will take for the compressor to detect the average RMS loudness level. The longer the length is, the slower the compressor reacts. If you put the RMS knob all the way to the left, you will set the compressor into peak detection mode. Anyway, moving to the right, you have a knee size knob, which is by default deactivated. To activate it, you select either linear or soft in the knee mode selector. Anything else is pretty much the standard stuff you get in every Melda's plugin. To go through it quickly, you have your limiter, accurate graphs, signal processing menu, automatic gain compensation, difference button that if you press it, you can hear the sound, only the signal that the compressor is actually processing. Also from A to H comparison modes, and so on. So moving on, why do I actually use it? It's miles better than your average stock plugin in your DAW in terms of functionality and performance. It's a very transparent tool. Although they are not similar, this plugin usually ends up replacing the SSL G unit when I'm done composing and I start doing a proper mixdown. It uses 0% of CPU when it's idle, 0 to 1% when it's processing a signal, has 0 milliseconds of latency, and does feature oversampling. A little side note, the oversampling in this case is not working, but that might be a bug on my end, so I need to look into that after this video. Does it show aliasing artifacts when it's not oversampled? Yes, it does. But the first artifacts start to show at around 1.5 kHz, way higher than the SSL G Bus Compressor from Waves. Again, at 48 kHz of sample rate, another nasty artifacts start to show at around like 3.64 kHz, and again then at 7.7 kHz. All in all of that can be avoided by using the oversampling, which this plugin does or should support. Oh, by the way, did I mention it's a free plugin? And last but not least, the third option, Kotelnikov from Tokyo Dawn Records. It's not easy for me to admit it, but I actually don't know how this plugin works. You can set the peak crest knob either to peak detection or RMS detection or something in between, and the plugin utilizes both in order to do its magic. You have attack time, which is the same for the RMS and peak detection, but the release times are separate for each. The manual describes how the detection is done, but explaining the purpose or the results and how to set the peak crest knob accurately is something beyond my understanding. So what I do, I usually rely on the presets, or I just tweak the peak crest knob until I found the settings that sounds the best. I have a small update on this. While I was editing the video, I think I started to understand how the compressor works when it uses both peak and RMS detection. So imagine yourself like a straight line, and that it will be your RMS average level loudness. And when you set the peak crest to positive values, for example 3 dB, it will be the 3 dB from the average level upwards, and that's where the compressor will start its peak function, and will go down for the time you set in milliseconds for the peak function. After that, it will engage its RMS path and will finish the compression, basically. The other thing I'm still trying to imagine and understand is what happens and how the compressor works when you set the peak crest into negative values. That's something that's not actually shown in the manual, like in the pictures, and I will need to do some testing to understand that further. But yeah, as for the positive values, I think that's how the compressor works. So if you keep that in mind, you can practically use that information to set the compressor properly. Okay, back to the video. Anyway, moving on. Why do I use this plugin? I use Kotelnikov as my mastering compressor among other ones. I have never used it as a single band, like a group of instruments or single insert compressor. It's pretty heavy, and I think the best use for this compressor is when you need to compress the master signal and you still need to retain the transparency of the signal. In precise mode, it uses 5 to 6% of CPU and it stays there when it's processing the signal. In echo mode, it uses 3 to 4% of CPU and again stays there when it starts to process the signal. It has 3.8 milliseconds of latency and it's the same for precise and echo mode. So the modes, precise and echo, they are basically your oversampling. You can read about that in the plugins manual. Anyway, you cannot switch off the oversampling. You can do that in the paid version, but in the free version, you're pretty much forced to use oversampling, which in my opinion is not a bad thing, because still this is a mastering plugin, which on the master bus you always should use your oversampling. So does it show aliasing artifacts? Yes, it does, but they are very small. I know it's not really a fair comparison comparison related to the other two plugins because we cannot switch off the oversampling, but this is the version I'm testing, so these are the results. If you are interested in the finer details, I will link the plugins manual in the description below. All in all, it's insane how clean the output of this plugin is, and it's very well programmed, so well done. And by the way, it's also free. Oh, and one more thing, a honorable mention goes to Elysia Alpha Compressor, but I didn't put it on the list because I'm still trying to find a feel for this compressor in order to work with it properly. So that means I'm still learning to use it. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please thumbs up, subscribe, click the bell icon, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.